And first this morning, the Fauci Facebook censorship. We now know that Dr. Anthony Fauci misled or flat out lied under oath to Senator Rand Paul during a Senate committee hearing. But today we are learning more about his potential collusion with the social media giant Facebook to keep that lie going and censor very serious information about the origins of COVID-19. First, here's the Fauci flip-flop over a 2-week period. Watch.
Dr. Barrett does not do gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain-of-function, despite the fact that people tweet that. It would have been almost a dereliction of our duty if we didn't study this. And the only way you can study these things is you've got to go where the action is. So we had a modest collaboration with very respectable Chinese scientists who are world experts on coronavirus. And we did that through a sub-grant from a larger grant to EcoHealth.
Okay. Joining me right now to discuss this is Senator Ted Cruz. He sits on the Senate Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees. Senator, good morning to you. It is wonderful to see you this morning. I want to get right into the Facebook connection. But first, Senator, tell us, did Fauci commit perjury just there?
It sure looks like it. He looked at Rand Paul's eyes and told a flat-out falsehood. And unfortunately, this has been a pattern with Dr. Fauci, that what he says on Monday somehow isn't the same as what he says on Tuesday. But don't worry, what he says on Wednesday is almost certain to be different. And I got to say, this email dump that came out makes clear that this is not just being sloppy. It is systematic, and it is systematically an effort to mislead the American people. And as you noted, he wasn't doing it alone, but he was doing it with much of the U.S. government behind him, and with Facebook and big tech operating as an extension of the U.S. government in order to silence any views that disagreed, not with the science, because he wasn't looking for the science, he was suppressing the science, but rather trying to silence anything that disagreed with the political narrative that was convenient that he was pushing at that moment.
Are you going to be able to do anything as a sitting senator on these so important committees? I mean, look, Senator, this keeps happening. First, it was the Russia hoax that the media said was not true, and they banned posts about it. Then it was a fake impeachment trial. Then it was the COVID treatment, hydroxychloroquine. We couldn't talk about that. Then it was the origins of COVID, that they have egg on their face. We're also not allowed to talk about election 2020. Look at this timeline about the Facebook Fauci censorship. On March 15th, Zuckerberg emails Fauci suggesting that they partner on COVID-19 Information Hub. And then on April 16th, 2020, Facebook posts steps that it is taking. It changes its policy, quote, to combat COVID-19 related misinformation, it claims. February 8th, 2021, Facebook announces it will be removing more false claims about COVID-19 and vaccines. May 25th, Fauci admits to modest collaboration, as we just heard. And then on May 26th, suddenly Facebook has to change its policy again, saying it will no longer remove the claim that COVID-19 is man-made. I mean, what's going on here? Will these companies ever be held to account for this corporate dominance and misleading of information to the American people?
Well, they certainly should be. Unfortunately, I don't expect the Biden administration will do anything to hold them to account. But these latest breakthroughs have real consequence, because it now is clear that Facebook was operating at the direction of and in the direct benefit of the federal government and operating as the government censor, utilizing their monopoly position to censor on behalf of the government. Maria, that's a very dangerous admission that is now out there for Facebook, because it means anybody in the country or anybody in the world whose statements, whose speech was censored by Facebook, if you went out and posted the facts that led a year ago to the very strong likelihood that the COVID virus escaped from a Chinese government lab in Wuhan, China. If you posted that a year ago and they took it down, I think there's a very good argument you have a cause of action against Facebook. And Facebook would ordinarily say, we're a private company, we're not liable. Well, You know what? When they act at the behest of the government, when they contact Fauci, when they say, should we censor this? And Fauci says yes, and they censor it for the federal government. And then magically, when the government changes his mind and said, oh, all those facts that were there a year ago, now you're allowed to talk about it. They stop censoring it with a flip of a switch. That lays a very strong argument that Facebook is operating as a state agency, and that opens very significant legal liability.
Yeah, we'll see. I want to put the Facebook statement on the screen so that our audience understands what they're saying about this in light of ongoing investigations into the origin of COVID-19. And in consultation with public health experts, we will no longer remove the claim that COVID-19 is man-made or manufactured from our apps. I mean, the question is, how many lives were lost as a result of this censorship? How many people's lives were impacted as a result of this ongoing misinformation coming from these so-called arbiters of truth? And by the way, Senator, do we know if Mark Zuckerberg has national security clearance? Why are his emails redacted? Okay, look at this emails. It's redacted. Why are we redacting emails with a CEO of a public company? It says, this is the email. This offer was raised again in a second email from Fauci's communications director on March 16th. She writes, the sooner we get that offer up the food chain, the better. And then we switch to another email where it says the really bigger deal that we want to share with you. I have an even bigger deal is his offer to redacted. What's the bigger deal that Zuckerberg was offering to Dr. Fauci that the American people can't know about? Does he have a national security clearance?
Well, we should know about it, and not that I know of, and we should know about it, and the fact that they're redacting it is ridiculous. The claimed basis for the redactions is a protection for trade secrets within a company. The real basis for the redaction is obvious. It's that whatever is there is politically embarrassing for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and so they don't want people to see it. And that's their strategy to media across the board is cover up. You know, a year ago in March and April of last year, I did 2 full podcasts on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, going through the evidence in March and April of last year, why the evidence strongly suggested this escaped from a lab. There are not one, but 2 laboratories studying virology in Wuhan, China. They don't just study virology. They study the virology of coronaviruses. They don't just study coronaviruses.
Exactly.
They study coronaviruses derived from bats. They don't just study them from bats, but from bats that are the closest place they occur naturally is 900 miles away. One of those 2 institutes, one of those 2 government labs is less than 400 yards away from the wet market where this outbreak first occurred. Now, we know that 3 different scientists at those labs got sick with what appears to be COVID, or at least symptoms very similar to COVID, right before this outbreak occurred. And of course, what happened? The Chinese government covered it up. And sadly, the deep state and the federal government covered it up as well. And Joe Biden and his minions in the press, including Facebook and big tech, did everything to cover up the facts. We should be getting to the bottom of the facts of a pandemic that has killed millions of people worldwide.